Hey guys, LevelCap here with a State of the Game report on Battlefield 2042. It's been over a month since the game's official retail launch, and many parts of the game have been massively improved, but other things not so much. DICE has started their live service content rollout, which so far includes some decent weapon skins and new temporary game modes. And generally speaking, if you look on Reddit, the community sentiment around the game seems to be mostly negative, though the people I actually speak to who are playing the game seem to be enjoying it for the most part. And that's made it hard to get a read on the game since so many people clearly don't like the game and so many people seem to be enjoying the game. The best I can say is it's divisive. So far, DICE has patched the game faster than I have seen them patch any other Battlefield game in my past 10 years of covering the franchise, and that's not to say that all the bugs and performance problems have been solved, but to me this does speak well about DICE's commitment to the future of the game. So far, and this again is speaking from my personal experience, but they fixed basically all of the connectivity issues with getting onto servers, a lot of the performance and lag stuttering issues with servers. They fixed and/or balanced most of the weapons impressively fast, and they fixed some of the UI quality of life issues, though there's still some work to be done there, and they've also updated the breakthrough maps that had borderline impassable objectives, so now the objectives are in new locations. Now, all that said, data miner Temporyal's latest data mine seems to indicate that we may not get DICE's first season of content until sometime in March. And while that might line up with past games DLC's timelines, it's still quite a ways off, especially if it's only one new map, a few new guns, gadgets, and maybe a single new specialist. Again, the data mine information is unconfirmed, but DICE has not yet stated that the information is inaccurate or that they have different plans, leading people to believe that it might actually be DICE's plan. And if that is the case, I hope that DICE has some decent patches planned to span the gap. Adding a permanent TDM game mode and improving general matchmaking to avoid repeat matches, or the ability to uncheck maps that you don't want to play, would really help reduce some of the monotony of having to play your least favorite maps back to back. Also, if they could patch in some of the game's most requested features like an in-game scoreboard, that would probably go a long ways while waiting for new content. So now that we have hindsight on the game's launch, I think there's some things we can say with almost 100% certainty about what happened. Firstly, 2042 launched early and could have used more time. I don't think I'm going out on a limb there making that statement. There's many debates as to how much time the game could have needed, obviously a year longer and we would have had a totally different game, but I think even a month or two and it could have avoided most of the extremely negative press and buzz that it received. And secondly, it's pretty clear that the game was not adequately tested with 128 players, leading to a number of obvious issues with balance and map flow. Of course, that can be wrapped up with the problems of needing more time, but it's really interesting to me, and also this is further backed up with reports from Tom Henderson that the game was primarily tested with 60 to 70 player test environments, which would obviously lead to issues with balance and flow, many of which the game still struggles with, such as lack of cover and maps that are simply just too flat and open and not well thought out for the number of players. However, regarding the bones of the game, I do think that we're in a much better place compared to, say, Battlefield 5's launch. It took Battlefield 5 about a year before it even felt like it was in a place to begin moving forward with balance and refinement gameplay meta. You have to remember that that game barely had functional progression trees and totally untested aerial combat and other things on launch day. With Battlefield 2042, I think the game is just about ready to start moving forward about a month after launch, and sure, there's more balance work needed, but the bones are there, and now it just needs more weapon refinement, map updates, some of which the game has already received, and we need more content for the base game, which is clearly planned, but hopefully we don't have to wait until March before getting it. Plus, as mentioned before, some in-game features like a scoreboard would be some nice quality of life improvements. Now, it's also been pointed out that Battlefield 2042 has been losing its player base pretty quickly. The recent sale and free weekend actually boosted it quite substantially, so we're back up compared to what it used to be, but it was a substantial drop overall. And it's not to say that other big AAA titles with big marketing pre-launch don't lose a lot of their player base after launch. This one's just been a little more drastic. To put things into more context, Halo Infinite, which has been extremely well received overall, lost 72% of its player base. in a pretty comparable time to Battlefield 2042's launch, where Battlefield 2042 would have lost 85% of its player base. However, Battlefield 2042 is actually up now thanks to that sale and free weekend, so it's closer to having lost 65% from its all-time peak. Again, it's hard to judge these things, Halo being so well received and still losing 72% of its peak player count versus Battlefield losing a little bit more but then a little bit less due to the free weekend / sale. It's hard to quantify it all. I think we just really need to observe it over a slightly longer period of time to better understand how the player base is going to fare in the long run. Now, regarding the overall community sentiment, again, people are still highly divided. There's definitely a lot of people that are just angry about the game and some of the design decisions made and some of the performance problems, especially on last-gen consoles. But for people who are enjoying the game, and I do lump myself into this category, I gotta say it's actually pretty darn fun. And I don't like feeling guilty about having to say that I'm enjoying a game, but it's just the fact of the matter. I load up the game, I have fun while playing it, I like doing the weekly progressions. I'm finding a lot of nuance involved with the specialist system, learning the best grappling spots with Mackay, finding good defensive areas with Irish, and Sundance's wingsuit antics are essentially never ending and also require a lot of skill and knowledge to become effective with them. And while I do wish DICE still built the game with a more class structured system, it's certainly not something that's at the tip of my mind while I'm playing. Plus, the fact that vehicles are so darn powerful in this game right now makes me hope that they at least let me keep the rocket launcher until they balance out the vehicles if they are planning to further classify the specialists in this game, which they have not made any comment about. So it's likely that a class system is not coming down the road, but who knows? The lack of weapon variety in the game is starting to wear a bit thin. I think it really depends just how much you're playing the game, since it does take a while to actually get all the guns unlocked. But one nice thing right now is that after the recent patch balances and updates, every single gun is very much usable. And while some guns are better than others, it's not currently by a massive margin, so you can basically pick just about any weapon, run out there and have a decent time with it. Overall, more weapon balance is needed, but I think there'll be subtle updates rather than massive overhauls. Now, as far as Hazard Zone goes, basically nobody's talking about that game mode anywhere. I don't think there's very many people playing it. The only talk I see about it is the trouble to actually try and get matches started, and especially in certain regions, I think it's nearly impossible already. This is something that I mentioned in my first impressions of the game. I just thought the game mode was so lame that it was going to be dead on arrival, and I'm sorry to say that that seems to have been pretty accurate. Regarding the live service for the game, so far we've received 2 weeks worth of content, 2 new weapon skins, which I personally think are pretty decent, and a few new game modes. It certainly hasn't been monumental content, but it's decent so far, which of course is drawing a bit more scrutiny because right now DICE really just needs to hit their live service content out of the park as opposed to just delivering acceptable content. Fortunately though, we haven't yet seen that scary Santa skin pop up, so my fingers are crossed that it wasn't really planned to come out, or maybe it was supposed to be a limited time thing, or who knows, maybe DICE is still gonna launch it. DICE did make a cute little infection mode with elves and candy canes, and what's nice about it is that it doesn't really affect the base game. So if you want to goof off with the seasonal game modes and do goofy stuff like stab people with candy canes, you can do that, but the base game is safe from all of that stuff. So if you still want to be in a military game that feels like a military game, well, you got the base game for that. Now, regarding Portal overall, it's definitely one of the modes that I've spent very little time playing, which is disappointing considering I had such high hopes for it. Really, the lack of XP kills it for me, and I'm sorry to say, but I like ranking up and getting new skins and camos and stuff like that, so game modes that don't have that tied into it just don't interest me. Maybe when I get everything progressed and unlocked, I'll be more interested in exploring it more, but ultimately I think I'm more of a base game kind of guy. I like 1 or 2 modes that are deeply refined and that I can master and enjoy. But that's not to say that there won't be something cool on Portal that pops up that'll pull me away from the base game. It's just not the case yet. What I do like about Portal is that it gives DICE a lot of power and even crowdsourcing potential for creating new modes and limited time events that can be introduced for XP. I think it's very smart in that regard, and it should keep 2042 interesting with never-ending weekly or monthly game modes. Personally, at this point, I think I'm just ready for for more balanced refinement and content injections. I hope DICE can keep up a good pace for the content, and if they are able to, they'll be doing right by me when it comes to my expectations for the post-launch support. If the content rollout is super slow, especially compared to previous Battlefield titles, well, then I'm gonna have issues with that. So from here on out, for me anyway, I'm putting all my faith in the live service and seasonal content to deliver a better Battlefield 2042 experience. And of course, I'm also expecting DICE to improve at least several more quality of life things with the game, like an in-game scoreboard and some sort of out-of-game stat tracking system, so I can see how I play as a player and maybe try and refine my skills accordingly. Anyway, if I'm being honest, I find it pretty hard to get a general pulse on the community right now. It still just seems to be very divided. A lot of the online discussion, most of it anyway, seems to be super negative, with an occasional post here or there saying, despite all of this stuff, I'm still having a lot of fun in the game. And that generally seems to be my sentiment with the game, and honestly, a lot of the other people that I've know in real life who play Battlefield 2042 have also been enjoying the game, despite some of the design decisions that we may not be enjoying. I do think that this game has legs. I'm genuinely enjoying playing it right now, and I think its future is totally dependent on how well DICE is planning to support the game with quality of life updates, new maps, and content. Let me know your experience with 2042 so far. How much have you played the game? Are you still playing the game? And what are your overall thoughts? As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.